You've definitely had that moment before, standing at the Starbucks counter, staring at names like Latte, Cappuccino, Cortado, Flat White, and Espresso, hoping you understand the difference. And even after ordering coffee plenty of times, a lot of us still don't realize how much a small change in milk, foam, or water can completely change the drink. So in this video, we're breaking down the coffees most people think they understand, then working our way into the stranger, rarer, and more controversial ones. So by the end, you'll know what you actually like, what to order with confidence, and which drinks are worth trying at least once just for the story. Espresso is the foundation of a huge number of coffee drinks around the world. It's made by pushing hot water through finely ground coffee at high pressure, creating a small shot that's rich, bold, and surprisingly intense for something you can finish in 2 sips. Tiny cup, serious attitude. An Americano is simply espresso with hot water added. It tastes closer to drip coffee, but still keeps some of that espresso character underneath. It's a good pick for people who want a longer, easier coffee without that sharp little punch of a straight shot. The drink is often linked to American soldiers in Italy during World War II, who started adding water to espresso to make it more familiar. A latte is one of the easiest espresso drinks to start with. It's made to feel smooth, mellow, and easy to sip, with plenty of steamed milk and just a light layer of foam on top. The coffee flavor is softer, rounder, and much less intense, which makes it a comfortable choice for people who want coffee without too much bite. It also pairs really well with flavored syrups, so if you usually go for something like vanilla or caramel, this is probably your lane. The name comes from cafe latte, which simply means coffee with milk. Cappuccino is probably one of those drinks that a lot of us have confused with a latte at some point, but the difference shows up the second you take a sip. In a cappuccino, the foam actually matters. It gives the drink a lighter, airier texture, with a more even balance of espresso, steamed milk, and milk foam. A latte feels smoother and softer, while a cappuccino feels fluffier and a little more structured, usually in a smaller cup too. If a latte is the easy, mellow one, cappuccino is what you order when you still want milk, just not in full blanket mode. If a latte feels a little too milky for you, a flat white is a very natural next step. It uses less milk than a latte, much less foam than a cappuccino, and lets the coffee come through more clearly. The texture is smooth and velvety, but not fluffy, so the whole drink feels tighter, stronger, and a little more grown-up without turning into a straight espresso situation. It's the kind of order people move to when they still want milk, but also want the coffee to stop being shy. Its exact origin is still argued over between Australia and New Zealand, which honestly feels very on brand for coffee. A cortado is for people who want espresso with the edge taken off, not covered up. It uses just enough steamed milk to soften the sharpness, while the coffee still stays firmly in charge. The drink is short, strong, and very direct. Without the foam of a cappuccino or the softer feel of a latte, it feels very close to straight espresso, just a little calmer and easier to handle. The name Cortado comes from Spanish and means cut, which is pretty much the whole idea. In some American coffee shops, you'll also hear it called a Gibraltar, named after the small glass it's often served in. A mocha is basically a latte with chocolate added. It lands somewhere between coffee and hot chocolate, with enough espresso to taste like coffee, but enough chocolate to keep things friendly. The bitterness gets softened, the whole drink feels sweeter and smoother, and it's a very easy choice for people who like coffee, but are not fully committed to the bitter side of the relationship yet. An affogato is what happens when coffee and dessert decide to stop pretending they're just friends. It's simply a scoop of ice cream with a hot shot of espresso poured right over it. The espresso melts into the ice cream, turning the whole thing into something rich, creamy, and ridiculously satisfying for how simple it is. The name affogato means drowned in Italian, which is a very dramatic way to describe ice cream having an excellent day. A Café Bombón is espresso with sweetened condensed milk, usually served in a small glass so you can see the two layers before they're stirred together. And honestly, that layered look is part of the appeal. Once you mix it, the drink turns rich, sweet, and much closer to dessert than a regular coffee. This is not the kind of coffee you order for something subtle. This is the one you order when you want your espresso to come with a serious sweet tooth. Vietnamese Egg Coffee has one of the best origin stories in the coffee world because it was basically born from a shortage. In Hanoi in 1946, fresh milk was hard to find, so a bartender named Nguyen Van Giang came up with a workaround, whipping egg yolks with sugar and condensed milk, then layering that rich mixture over strong coffee. What came out of that was something way more luxurious than a backup plan. The top is thick, creamy, and almost custard-like, while the coffee underneath keeps it from turning into straight dessert. A lot of people describe it as liquid tiramisu. Sounds dramatic until you try it and realize that is actually pretty fair. It became so popular that Giang later opened his own cafe, and his family still runs it today. Dalgona Coffee is the whipped coffee drink that went wildly viral in 2020. It's made by whipping instant coffee, sugar, and hot water into a thick foam, then spooning it over milk. A big part of the appeal was how nice it looked and how easy it was to make at home, which is probably why half the internet turned into baristas for a few weeks. Even so, the drink was not exactly brand new. Versions of it had already existed in other places long before it showed up on everyone's phone screen. Cold brew is not just hot coffee poured over ice, it's brewed slowly in cold water over many hours, which gives it a smoother, less acidic taste and a softer kind of bitterness. That's why a lot of people find it easier to drink, especially if regular iced coffee can feel a little sharp. The one thing people sometimes underestimate is the caffeine, because cold brew can taste very mellow while still hitting pretty hard. Nitro cold brew is basically cold brew infused with nitrogen gas and served from a tap. What that changes is not just the look, but the feel of the drink. It comes out with a dense, creamy texture and a foamy head, almost like a dark beer, even though there's no milk in it at all. It's usually served without ice, so the texture stays intact. More than flavor alone, this is one people try for the mouthfeel. The Greek Frappé is a very different kind of iced coffee. It's made with instant coffee, and the foam is the whole point. When it's shaken or blended, it turns thick, frothy, and light brown, with a texture that feels much more playful than most cold coffee drinks. It was famously invented by accident in Greece, when someone improvised with cold water instead of hot, and that unexpected foam became the drink's signature. So this one stands out less for refinement and more for personality. Mazagran is one of those drinks that sounds wrong before it sounds interesting. In its modern Portuguese form, it's usually coffee over ice with lemon and sometimes a little sparkling water. On paper, that can feel like coffee made a questionable summer choice, but in practice, it's light, sharp, and much more refreshing than most people expect. This is less of a standard cafe order and more of a reminder that coffee can go in stranger directions than we usually give it credit for. Bulletproof coffee is less of a cafe order and more of a lifestyle drink. It's brewed coffee blended with butter and MCT oil, usually by people following low-carb or keto-style diets. The appeal is not really sophistication or tradition, it's that some people find it more filling and feel like it gives them steadier energy. But it's also rich, heavy, and very much not for everyone. So this one matters less as a coffee classic, and more as an example of how coffee can get pulled into health trends. Turkish coffee is one of the oldest coffee styles still widely enjoyed today, and it feels different from the first sip to the last. The coffee is ground extremely fine, almost to a powder, then simmered with water in a small pot called a sezve. It isn't filtered, so the grounds settle at the bottom of the cup, which gives the whole drink a thicker, heavier character than most modern coffee. You stop before the muddy layer at the bottom, and that alone makes the experience feel slower and more deliberate. Arabic coffee, or kahwa, often surprises people because it doesn't taste like the dark, heavy coffee they may be expecting. It's usually made with lightly roasted beans and often flavored with cardamom, which gives it a gentler, more aromatic, more spiced character right away. Just from the flavor alone, it already stands apart. It's also deeply tied to hospitality, traditionally served in small cups as a gesture of welcome, which helps explain why it carries so much cultural weight. UNESCO has even recognized it as part of intangible cultural heritage. Ethiopian Buna stands out not just because Ethiopia is so often linked to the origin story of coffee, but because the ceremony itself is the point. The beans are roasted, ground, and brewed right there in front of people, often in a clay pot called a jebena, and the whole process takes time. Then the coffee is served in multiple rounds, with each serving getting lighter as the ritual continues. More than almost anything else on this list, this is coffee built around presence, patience, and sharing the moment with other people. Café de Olla is a traditional Mexican coffee brewed with cinnamon and piloncillo, an unrefined sugar with a deep, almost caramel-like sweetness. The result is warm, fragrant, and immediately comforting, with a flavor that feels fuller and more spiced than everyday coffee. It's often made in a clay pot, which can add a subtle earthy note, but the real draw is how naturally cozy the drink feels. This is one people remember for the flavor first. Café Cubano is a tiny espresso with a very big presence. What makes it stand out is the espuma, that thick sugary foam on top, which gives the drink a creamy look before you even taste how concentrated it is. The flavor is strong, sweet, and punchy all at once. So this is not the coffee people go to for subtle notes or nuance. It's the one that makes an impression immediately. Café Touba is one of the most distinctive coffees on this list because of its spice profile. It's made with coffee and grains of salim, a West African spice that gives the drink a warm, peppery, slightly smoky character, unlike almost anything else here. That flavor is usually what catches people first. In Senegal, it also carries spiritual and historical significance, but even before you know any of that, the taste already tells you this is a very different coffee tradition. Yuenyeung is a Hong Kong drink that mixes coffee with Hong Kong-style milk tea, which sounds like the kind of idea that should not work nearly as well as it does. But the tea adds a creamy, smooth depth, while the coffee brings a more direct kick, and together they land in a very satisfying middle ground. It can be served hot or iced, which gives it a little more range than people expect. Anyway, this one stands out for the combination itself. Kaffeost is one of those coffee drinks that makes people pause immediately. Because yes, it really does involve putting cheese into coffee. It sounds strange at first, but the flavor is much gentler than you would expect. The cheese softens, soaks up the coffee, and turns into a mild little bite at the end. Weird in theory, surprisingly harmless in the cup. This is not Vietnamese egg coffee at all. In the Scandinavian version, the egg is not there to make a creamy topping. It's mixed into the coffee while it brews, where it helps pull out some of the bitterness and leaves the final cup smoother, clearer, and lighter than you'd expect. So the two drinks share the same name, but the egg is used in completely different ways, which feels a little unfair to everyone trying to learn coffee. Kopi Luwak is famous for one reason people never forget. The beans pass through the digestive system of a civet before they're cleaned, roasted, and brewed. That unusual process, along with how rare it is, helped turn it into one of the most expensive coffees in the world. So yes, the story is strange, the price is high, and that is a big part of why people keep talking about it. But this drink also comes with a serious ethical problem, because many civets are kept in cages and exploited to meet demand. Truly wild, ethically sourced Kopi Luwak does exist, but it's much harder to find and far more expensive. So this is one of those coffees where the story matters just as much as the taste. So in the end, coffee is not just a bunch of different names on a menu. Some drinks are just espresso with a new ratio, some are dessert in disguise, and some carry a whole culture with them. From my own experience, start with a latte if you're new, go for a flat white or cortado if you want more coffee without losing the milk, and pick mocha, affogato, or Café Bombón if sweet is clearly the mission. Just keep one thing in mind, some of these drinks are sneaky. The caffeine stacks up, the sugar piles on, and that small coffee can leave you shaky, wired, or staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. Before I wrap up, I want to ask you one thing. Which coffee do you mix up the most, and which one would you actually try first? If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, and subscribe.